Hello, hello.
Hello.
I'm watching the comment section. If everyone can hear me, drop a hi, hello, or one of your favorite terms to say hello. Just gonna watch. I think. Okay, I think we're good. All right, welcome everyone to our second uh, tech call. Excited to have you all again. I know we are trying another time slot. We probably did the same one for the previous tech call. And this one is a bit more technical than our usual community calls, so do bear with us. Um, but we are going to give some updates as well, a little bit in the beginning, but most of the call will be done by my co-founder Anumit and our lead engineer Akshay. So even if you don't follow, if you're not a techie, it's still pretty interesting. So I would really ask you to stick around and share it with your friends. If you're not able to attend this right now and you're watching this recording, that's also totally fine, right? We're going to share this on our Discord and email soon. First things, I wanted to introduce somebody new to our team who will be joining us at more of the calls, especially the community calls. So say hello to Indy. Indy, do you want to come off mute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everyone, to those that are watching and those that'll be watching in the future. My name is Indira Smith, but I also go by Indy, and I am super excited to be joining the team at Powerloom as growth marketing and helping out with some of the other team members that are also part of the community. So I've been in Web2 for a couple years now, and I am super excited to keep on building. And that's me.
Awesome.
Thank you, Indy. And yeah, so you'll be seeing more posts and videos, hopefully more content, right? Indeed, she's been working on a few things behind the scenes. There's some secret reveals. I don't know if today anything's going to happen. I'll leave that to Indy and Pratik to handle that. But yeah, like I said in the beginning of the call, this is our tech call. So we're going to deep dive into how our protocol works, a lot about phase two as well. So all of that is going to be covered by Anumit and Akshay. And maybe some a little bit of housekeeping stuff. I know the questions will start to roll in. Where is my invite? What's going on with phase two? All of these will be answered. I know I do it in the beginning of the call, but I wanted to respect the effort that our engineers put behind the scenes, and Anumit has put a lot of effort overnight as well last night to get all of these content, and we're also doing this live, right? So it's not just like putting in a presentation. So we wanted to do more of that. So feel free to put your questions more about that in the beginning if you can. And I think towards the end, when Anumit says like, hey, we are done, I'll sort of come back in, give an update on phase two, what's happening, and there's a little bit of a surprise for some people, and I'll reveal that all at the end. So over to you, Anumit.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for also like a huge shout out to Sagar, our designer, because he was the one who was up pretty much all night making very easy to understand graphics for this slide. So yeah, I just I hope you can see my screen over here. I will move into a full screen view. Let me know if it's all good. Okay. So the idea here is that we were trying to look a little closer into what kind of builds the protocol state. How do we access such data sets where you see something like a Uniswap v2 dashboard, and at the same time we also launched incentivized testnet effort for phase two itself. You saw at least 4 to 5 different DeFi protocols. We were tracking our activity on it, and then that kind of fed into Merkel's dashboard quests, and you could see yourself progress like level by level, right? So that was like a way for us to quickly show you like how we could dynamically handle a lot of contract activity, a lot of new wallets being added, and then feed it into a proper application logic, right? So we thought that let's take you through a tour of what that made it so special, And then we will also give you some reveals, like Swaroop mentioned, like where is all this heading towards, right? So three main points is a closer look at the protocol state, continuing from the last call, the improvements we brought upon in phase two for feeding that into the quests that are shown by Merkle, our great partner, and then how does it feed into the actual public launch of this phase, which becomes like a dynamic sort of data market where people can put in their interest, people can sign up, snapshot, subscribe to different sort of activities or different DeFi protocols, contracts, whatever the need happens to be, right? So moving on, like right away, if you go to our hosted Uniswap dashboard and open up the developer console, you'll be able to see that there are a bunch of calls that are being made on the backend, right? So there are calls, these project IDs, aggregate to up 24 hours, aggregate 7-day top pairs, etc. I think some of us, we have reached out to you, also mentioned it in one of the project's readmes that this is where we ask you to track your submissions. Like we go ask you to go to the consensus dashboard and we say that, hey, can you see whether your submissions are coming through or not, right? But like what exactly are these aggregate project IDs? Where do they come from? So I will just continue off the discussion from where we had left off the last call, right? Like the Uniswap V2 dashboard, we had taken a very glancing look at what the Pooler front end repository was like. So, what is this backend? The backend is actually one of the nodes hosted by the Powerloom Foundation. Just like you have your node running, and if you notice the deploy repository, you can mention a setting on the environment called Pooler API prefix. So those are the kind of changes that we have brought upon in our own hosted node, right? Excuse me, one second. I'm too sorry. The neighbor's kid just came through. So sorry about that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Is that so? Okay. Hold on. Um, I'm trying to access the gain. The gain is at the max. That's strange. Hold on. No, that's. I'll just try to move in the microphone closer. Maybe that might help. Is this any better? Yeah. Sorry about the interruption as well. Like my neighbor's kid came through. Mm, Yeah, the backend is the core API service, which is exposed through the Pooler repository itself. All of you have access to this. Hence, we do ask you to run the dashboard on your own on your own instance as well. And then we have given you certain instructions where you can tunnel into that port and then load it locally, right? So, what are these project IDs? How are they getting aggregated? Let's start taking a look at that specifically. Overall, the schematic view would be something like this. You have the dashboard. There are certain calls that are made to the core API web server that are exposed through the Pooler container. And this query is finally the Powerloom chain's deployed contract. This is where the finalized protocol state does come from. So, if you ever thought that this kind of dashboard is being built locally, the only local part here is whenever we cache these certain data sets that are finally replied to from the Powerloom chain's smart contract. So this is something that we designed specifically keeping in mind for people who would want to launch a dashboard right away, who would want to kind of open up their own API services later on to become like, demand-based query services, which they can put certain restrictions on, they can put certain subscriptions on. So, but that's like a work in the making. This is the schematic view I wanted you to get a quick look at, because this is something that will help you maybe extend the Pooler use case for your own needs later on. Like you're totally free to do that. That is exactly where the tech call one also ended at. So yeah, this is the schematic view, but let's take a look at what makes these project IDs, right? So this has been something that Akshay has put his mind to for quite a while, and this is the schematic we have come up with. You have these base snapshots against your Uniswap pair contracts, which has a very simple schema over here. It carries something like a project type. Project type, if you recall from the last time we showed you, there are two categories of snapshots in the pooler repos that you're running. One is the trade volume repository, trade volume snapshot, and then another is the pair reserve snapshot, right? So two categories of snapshots are running. So that comes under the project type schema. Then you have the pair contract address itself. Namespace here happens to be, if you notice, you're running testnet applications, it happens to be the Uniswap v2 namespace. It's there in your settings as well, if you notice that, right? And now comes the aggregate snapshot. So there is a couple of things noted over here called single project aggregates and multi-project aggregates, right? So what would be a single project aggregate is nothing but I take a pair contract and over it I iterate for 24 hours worth of snapshots, and then I give you a summation, I can give you a filter, whatever things you have configured, right? So that becomes a single projects aggregate. And then you have a multi-project aggregate, which is what you see in the dashboard. So multi-project aggregate is nothing but the fact that you have multiple single project aggregates like contract 1, contract 2, contract 3. For over each of them, I have like 24-hour summations. And then I put all of these together into one single data set, and you get something called a multi-project aggregate. So this is also what I think we had mentioned in the last call, being the power of data composition. Like you just specify the compositions and the rest of the stuff is taken care of by the snapshotting logic itself. So you focus on writing the logic. The rest of the work is done by the data composition part of the protocol. Yeah, examples, great. You can see there are a couple of examples noted over here. I can't use the laser pointers. Okay. One is called pair contract underscore pair total reserves, right? So that is the part that I was mentioning, that you have one type of category of snapshot. Like this is where the project type comes in. And then you also have the aggregate 24-hour stats light. This happens to be the multi-project aggregate against which we often try to debug whether your snapshot submissions are going through or not, right? I think my face is coming on the string. Oh, sorry about that. Give me a second. Let me quickly try to resize this. Can make myself small. It's fine. All right. I hope it's cool. Right. So that being said, there are a couple of places in the code you can take a look at for yourself where the calls from the front end. On the right side is the Pooler front end's code base. I have taken these snippets from GitHub itself. So just go check out the Pooler front end repository. It's right over there in the Powerloom organization. Over there, you see that the very first call is made is that something called a last finalized epoch against a certain project. And then against that epoch, all the sort of data, the data set itself is loaded by making a call to the core API services. So right, I've just given you a couple of places where you can map the calls being made from the Pooler front end to the actual handler within the core API service. So you can see that the last finalized epoch handler is here inside core API. The epoch specific data for a certain project is also noted over here, and you will find like so on and so forth. All these calls can be directly mapped to the handlers that are there within the core API. So anyone who wants to hack around this, who wants to extend it for their use case, absolutely feel free to. We'll be also happy to welcome if you have any sort of functional pull requests that enhance the functionality of these kind of calls, right? So if you notice over here, there's a finalized CID that gets fetched, right? You're calling a data specific for the epoch against a certain project ID. So this kind of IPFS fetches, they do get cached in the local Redis cache for maybe the duration of one epoch itself. So that totally depends upon how much the epoch happens to be configured as. For the high throughput chains, which I will come to later, like the Polygon ZK EVM, and there are quite a few other partners to come along, we keep the epoch sizes obviously pretty less so that you can get a lot more real-time updates. And I also wanted to talk to that about how this becomes necessary for multiple snapshotters to redundantly read data and commit their snapshots, because in high throughput chains, especially experimental chains, you do have certain issues where a few nodes within the same geographical region will miss out on a couple of blocks or transactions, right? They do catch up later on because that's how a decentralized peer-to-peer system works. It's like a viral propagation, but sometimes, not all the time, maybe one in 10,000. This is not an accurate statistic, but happens once in maybe 10,000 transactions, one gets missed, right? So this is something that I believe we have noted it while things were running as part of the Merkle quests. So after I take a quick look at the protocol state that is already hosted on the Powerloom chain, I will get to that part. What I mentioned as like a quick recap, what I mentioned as the core API, which finally queries the Powerloom's protocol state that is deployed on the Powerloom chain. Uh, how do you verify it, right? How do you know that this call, this query is actually accurate or not? One of the first things is, because we're building a certain validator ecosystem, there are these helpers, there are these view functions that are pretty much available for anyone at the moment. Later on, it becomes a more validator specific functionality, but you can do it. So the very first thing you got to do is head over to the deploy repo, choose your testnet 5 pairs branch, and the example environment file already holds the RPC and the contract address over which the protocol state is deployed. You can add a MetaMask new network. If you notice, this mentions the same RPC URL. Don't worry, I will also take you through the remix screen itself later on. But you can add this RPC that is right over there in the environment example file. And then you add the chain ID. Ideally, it should get filled up by the queries being done by MetaMask. If it does not get filled up, just make sure you fill up one of four currency symbol. Even though anything is fine for now, I've just written power because we internally in the team happen to like it so much, just to show what we are transacting with on the testnet. And then the third step is actually very simple. You take the protocol contracts ABI from the pooler repo itself and load it in Remix. Save it with the .abi extension. As soon as you save it with the .abi extension, whenever you go to the deploy side of things, you can choose your injected provider as MetaMask and load the contract at the address which is given in the environment example file from the deployable. And now there will be certain things that you can do to check, for example, the 24-hour aggregate for the top pairs. This is essentially the data set that you see when you visit the hosted Uniswap V2 dashboard, right? So this is the project ID, I think, where most of you have access to the string from the deploy repo itself, because our instructions are for you to check your snapshot submissions against this project, right? But how do we check how is it performing on the protocol state contract itself? So this is free for you to check out, because on a chain, reads are always free. You do not need to make transactions, right? So once I have loaded, going back once, so I have loaded the address, I have supplied the protocol states ABI, and once I click on at address, all these helpers come through. So the very first helper that I will make use of is this helper of against last finalized snapshot CID. You can't see the whole expanded form, which I'll show you on a live screen in a bit. You just have to paste this project ID over there and just click on the last finalized snapshot CID, last finalized snapshot. It gives you the epoch ID. it gives you the last finalized epoch ID against this project. The second helper happens to be called max snapshot CID. This essentially holds the CID against which the maximum number of submissions have been received. The finalized snapshot happens to be present over here. You paste the project ID and you paste the epoch ID that you get from making the call to this helper. Against that, you find a certain huge string come out. This is the IPFS CID, which you can access it either from your local node, or you can use a public gateway like ipfs.io/ipfs/CID. That you can see the complete data set that gets rendered in your browser. If you're using a good JSON extension as well, it will render it pretty clearly. And then you can see these entire pair contracts and the data that are being rendered on the dashboard. So like you can see that the snapshot CID comes from the protocol state itself, and the rendering is happening based on a finalized CID. It's not being done on some ad hoc local calculation that is only local to your node. So yeah, that is the most important part over here, I believe, which allows you to build a dashboard, host it loosely decoupled anywhere in the world, and you can make use of these decentralized data sets, which give you built-in redundancy, which gives you built-in verifiability, etc. A quick review of how did we come across this aggregate. If you let's go through how you can have these different finalized snapshots, which is what I was showing you for the base projects called the pair contracts. And then you have a time series based aggregation. This is what we saw right over here in part of the large data set that happens to be for us 24 hours, and the data composition happens to be aggregate for the dashboard, but we could have filter, we could have a map reduce, we could have a summation, all of that, right? And the data composition part allows us to weave together one composition upon other. So there's basically no ideally no end to the complexity, but yeah, like Turing completeness is a problem. Like you cannot keep adding aggregations until infinity, but you can get pretty complex with it, right? So upon the 24-hour data set that I showed you, like I mentioned, someone could write their aggregation as an extension saying that I only want to show 24-hour aggregations for a certain number of pair contracts. I don't want all of them. So that's also possible. Right? But so those are the things that it's like exposing kind of the internals of Formula One engine, and then giving it off to consumers, saying that hey, go build your own car, right? That's not exactly helpful. So we realized that the best way to show what we were building behind the scenes is to just put it out there in the public, let people at scale, like we had like at least 10,000 or so wallets just registering their activities over here. So we decided that we'll partner up with certain renowned DeFi protocols, exchanges, bridges, and then try to tag their activity with the OG snapshotters who have been supporting us since day one, right? So it's like the best of both worlds. They are the ones who dogfood our platform, and you get to at least see the results of what we are trying to build right away. And like I'm pretty excited to share this part specifically because a lot of work and kudos to Akshay for that has gone behind this to make our data markets really, really flexible. Like we can now have a data feed from any sort of data market. In our case, it happened to be Merkle. Amazing job by them to support so many different use cases. But it's not just Merkle. We could have a decentralized data market which works on a certain demand-based system, right? People put in auctions bids. The snapshotters can pick up the markets which they will be mostly rewarded from. We'll take a closer look at those things, right? But how did your snapshots get tracked for now? For phase two, for redundancy purposes, also like you do have the protocol state smart contract. We hosted three of our nodes. We basically used three different RPC subscriptions from three different providers to be completely decentralized and neutral from our point of view. And we made sure that everyone had a very separate payment plan, their own card setup. So all of that thing was set up behind the scenes. A little note, like I mentioned, that we mentioned a few transactions. So it was like literally, it was like 1 in 10,000. They're not being seen by those snapshot nodes. So often that would happen because they would end up in the same sub network, and that kind of highlighted the same issue that we have been trying to bring to everyone's attention for a long time, that data reads are inherently not so trustworthy because you will miss out on certain state transitions, and then your final application logic, which in our case happens to be your quest tracking on the dashboard, can go for a toss. That is kind of the reason we have been trying to highlight this, right? So yeah, this is overall idea, but let's kind of see how this would look in a schematic sort of way. So you have our hosted snapshotted nodes with three different RPC subscription. So they do bulk snapshotting based on certain transfer event logs or things that you have done as tasks, basically, right? If you recall, some of the tasks were to do with supplying liquidities in QuickSwap pools. There were also certain tasks to do with bridging assets from any chain to Polygon ZK EVM. So we have been tracking those things based on signatures. And this is where the dynamic part comes in. So Merkle had a feed given in to these snapshotters. And this is the feed that has been coming in since you guys have been registering for the phase two. Okay, my face is coming here again. Hold on. Let me fix. Yeah. So the feed has been coming on from Merkle's wallet activity, where you go register for phase two, and we get to know that, hey, this is the wallet address against which we are going to start tracking and registering the actual snapshots for your activities of swaps, the quick swap swaps, the liquidity position provisions, also bridge activities, etc. This is also where a decentralized data marketplace can come and plug in and purely be a filter based on the sort of things the snapshotter is interested in. So, if you can think a little bit ahead, this is what we are headed towards, like a live auction bid sort of market where you just configure your node depending on the kind of rewards and the kind of resources you can give to snapshotting, and then the node itself starts picking up the certain activities bids based on what kind of rewards you are expecting. So we will see more of that on action as we start onboarding. One of the things that we have done is basically what you saw as project IDs right earlier, right? Like you saw a big string aggregate, this, that. That used to come earlier. If you notice, if you go into your current pooler repo for the testnet, it is there inside a configuration projects example. So that was making it static. This is what we did. That what we will continue doing is just the snapshotters express a certain interest in certain sort of event topics, event signatures, transaction input parameters, and then from that combined with the dynamic data market, this is how finally the snapshots will be registered on the protocol smart contract. So just in case your snapshotter node cannot handle the load of a lot of contracts to be snapshotted, that can be dynamically configured, right? So that is the biggest change that has come along. And the third huge change is us introducing this totally preloader based architecture. It is mentioned in passing inside the README for Pula. But what this essentially does is that there are a lot of common data points which all the snapshot workers have to access, regardless of what they're finally trying to do. So I'll give you like three examples, which are also included in the Pooler repository as well. You'll notice that there are certain preloaders that just fetch the details of the block itself. And then there is a preloader that fetches all the transaction receipts within that block. And there is another preloader, the last one, that fetches like ETH price conversions between stablecoin and other pairs. Very important data point. I know a lot of data point calculations, very specifically, like when we show on the dashboard that the total trade volume happens to be certain in USD, the conversion for that snapshot's epoch specific capture is actually accurate because we have captured the price conversion ratio right at that moment. The preloaders have taken care of it. After that, you can build as many snapshots. The RPC calls this time will be minimized because of this architecture. So this is the biggest improvement, I guess, in phase 2. So I kept it for the last. Uh, in the code, you can see that there is a little bit of an example that I have included. um, Essentially what it is doing is, if you notice the first line, it's just getting something called a transaction receipts from a epoch, from a cache. This is essentially what it does. The cache is something that the preloader fills up. So since this proceeds in a sequential step, you can always assume that this will be available, because our architecture takes care that if your preloaders have been failing, right, it will either send a certain alert or it will try to recreate the preloaded data sets before it goes and tries to create the actual snapshot itself. So the first example it does is, you can see it gets the all the transaction receipts for a certain epoch, and from there it starts filtering based on certain things it wants to build on, right? So over here you can see that there is a certain track being done on the USDC contract for a transfer event. This is combined with a certain logic. If you once you open source it, you can go look at it. This will be open sourced over the weekend. That we are kind of iterating over these different event logs. We're checking event logs of our interest based on transfer signatures, based on which address the calls are going towards. Or there's also liquidity addition, there is safe order deployment, etc. So those specific logic bits you can see in the relevant snapshot builders, but they do not make any more extra RPC calls. That is the biggest improvement that has happened here. Once you do that, you can see that it builds a quick snapshot, and then it takes care of the snapshot submission based on the activity feed from Merkle, right? So this is where you see this is like a overall collection of all USDC address transfers, and this passes through the dynamic data filter that comes thanks to the calls from Merkle this time, but a decentralized data marketplace in the near future. And this builds up the chain of snapshots across different wallet addresses that we have been tracking, right? So that's how most of the people successfully reported their quests were being completed, because that's how we managed to capture a lot of this activity that is happening on chain. All right. So where are we regarding this development regarding dynamic data markets, right? So some quick points right before I kind of take a quick review of the protocol state itself. The data sources, whether they are private key EOA sort of address or a contract address, are now checked against that dynamic source, which I was mentioning. Uh, right now, the source is being leveraged by some like an interactive quest and activity tracker like Merkle, but later on it becomes a decentralized marketplace with bids and bounties that may be placed to signify weightage and rewards for those participating in the market. This also enables the snapshot to participate only in the contracts or addresses they may gain the best rewards from. Also, you can imagine this plays like a counterweight against someone who really has a certain demand for a data. They will be willing to compensate you for the work your node will be putting in, right? And the most important bit that now such a source does not have any limitation on the data source networks from which you will be fetching these snapshots, right? So this is the biggest feature that we should be able to support, that you weave together cross-chain data like seamlessly. You don't have to think of further writing logic to say that, hey, I need data from that chain, this chain. It will all be put together as part of one snapshot and node. Also, another work that is happening behind the scenes is we are supporting lighter proofs on roll-up networks, because this has been like a demand for a while, like for a validated ecosystem. Specifically, if we want to support a validator ecosystem, we have to support lighter proofs. So that work is ongoing already, thanks to also the roll-up chains that have come up in the recent past, who have partner with us, especially like Polygon, the CDK ecosystem. They're helping us a lot in understanding how best we can fit in these lighter proofs and integrate with the validator network, which will also enable you to start having these activities like fraud claims and supplication of fraud proofs. This was so far not enabled on the protocol state. You'll see certain helpers that are there in the ABI, but at the moment, that is the work that is being done to integrate the validators within that sort of an ecosystem, right? So since we're kind of here, I thought I would take a couple of minutes to go back into the protocol state. But Swaroop, if you can hear me, are there any questions that people need to be answered?
Don't see anything in
No
YouTube.
questions so far, Anand. Yeah.
Okay. All right. But the voice and audio were clear, I hope, right? Okay. So one thing I wanted to show you is I hope you can see my remix screen, right? It's there, right? Yeah. Okay. We have this deployment environment example that I was mentioning, right? The steps I had mentioned about adding the new RPC URL for the Prost 1D contract, and the protocol state contract itself is deployed at this address. What I've taken you as a walkthrough in the slides, I can show you working right over here. So just make sure you've included the injected provider. Your account can be anything because reads are free, right? And make sure the protocol state ABI is saved and remixed with the dot ABI extension. So I paste the contract address and I click on address. It will ask you for a confirmation. Go ahead. In any case, transactions, if you even attempt to do, they might not be allowed because of certain ACL being applied on that. Okay, let's kind of take a quick look at what is happening in the protocol state, right? Okay, what is an epoch size? So, okay, let me try to zoom in. Yeah, I believe this is clearer. Yeah, what's epoch size? It's 10. This happens to be the epoch size we have used for the testnet participants, right? So 10 blocks on the Ethereum mainnet. On phase two, like I mentioned, it's a high throughput chain. You'll see the epoch size being much, much less. And since our node snapshotting logic has been totally overhauled and the support for dynamic data markets has come in, it fits in quite well with a more lightweight approach with smaller epochs, which give you close to the bleeding edge of the blockchain. And yeah, if your data market happens to be that competitive and edgy, that's where a lot of the market economics and demands will come in. People who want high risk, high edge data, they will be accordingly compensating those who snapshot it with certain accuracy. And yeah, penalties, rewards follow from that market logic. Let's kind of take a look at there are quite a few helpers over here. If you notice that there are certain snapshotters, okay, wow, we have like 40 snapshotters over here. There is this is something that we have built as an emergency measure because we have had a lot of issues with the nodes that go up and down, right? So we have at least like two large nodes hosted by us, which still go and finalize these snapshots, right? And here we go. This is a nice thing. So what's the snapshot submission window? You can imagine that this is in seconds. Over 50 seconds, we kind of hold a window open for people to submit their snapshots. This gets configured according to the data market. If it happens to be a high throughput chain, the window will be much less. Yeah, that's how this current system works. Now, let's take a look at these are the project IDs. If you have noticed, they have been, these are statically configured. This is the phase one part. This is what I was mentioning for phase two. This is now moved out to a dynamic filtering sort of service, right? Which can do a callback and then upgrade the protocol state accordingly, but it will be completely decoupled from the protocol state itself, right? So, as you can notice, all of these things are totally open for you to query, right? All right, like this is the part that we wanted to kind of see. Last finalized snapshot, right? Against what was the project ID? Let's kind of copy paste from somewhere. Okay, and let's see. Right, aggregates. We have a 7-day trade wallet. Let's check. It says the last finalized snapshot against this 7-day trade volume happens to be 5296, right? Let's copy that. Now, this is the helper if you remember max snapshots CID. This gives you the actual finalized CID against which the maximum snapshots have been received and which finalizes the CID for this epoch. So this is the epoch ID parameter and this is the project ID parameter. Let's make a call. Okay, there's some issue with this. What happened here? Not sure when it displays. I think there's some copy paste issue happening. It's coming out as a empty string. I should do the copy paste from maybe sure. It's a paper copy paste. I think I'm on the wrong network. Just checking my network. Hold on. I think I'm on the wrong network. There are none of paste. I think my network RPC is suddenly blocked. There is no response coming for some reason. I do have to debug this later on. I think our RPC services are not reachable from my network. Thankfully, this is where the caching comes in. Let me just quickly zoom in. If you notice the URL over here, somehow I cannot completely zoom in, but do notice that I have been able to make a call to the backend against a certain past epoch. Even if the network gets unreachable, I do have the capability to still query the node and keep the dashboard running and have the top pairs like here, the entire data set gets loaded against a certain epoch. So this is the epoch ID 4776 in this example, which I have queried, which still returns my dataset even if there is an issue reaching the local network from my end, right? So that is something that anyway I wanted to showcase the importance of such a state at least being cached on your end. You got to see it live in action. That's really good. Mm, yeah. Over here, back to our phase two part. So, and quickly going back to the schematics over here. This is the part you just saw in action at the moment. Even if there are issues reaching here, the Powerloom chain, or some issue happens while trying to fetch the IPFS CID, there will always be a certain range of epochs that we keep it cached in local memory. Let me just quickly change to the slide. Yeah, this is the schema I was just trying to bring up. This is something that you will always have a certain range of epochs that do stay cached locally. Even in case issues like this come up where I cannot access the cross network, maybe the RPC nodes are under heavy load because we are actually running three different networks at the moment on the test network. A couple of them, you guys are already on it, the simulation network and the test net. And this is also running the Merkle quests tracking as well. So since we're moving on to a Polygon CDK based ecosystem, these issues will kind of disappear because it's a very, very high throughput chain, and we intend to use their roll-up functionalities as well to ensure that these large number of snapshot submissions and the building up chain of epochs, they kind of cause a state bloat on the chain. That happens to be now very well modularized with the CDK approach that Polygon is helping us with, where we kind of have a separate module altogether for data availability. But yeah, more on that later. This is something you saw in action at the moment, where your dashboard will continue to function even if the network becomes unreachable sometimes, right? So which is entirely possible. Uh, yeah. Back to that review where we had left off at that last call, where we kind of wanted certain participation from the people who have been following the project, who wanted to contribute. The real contribution that you can do is actually extended for your use case, right? So we will be opening up again to a lot of partners who will obviously look for your participation submissions, and there will be rewards according to that. But what best way to get started than to actually build a use case which you know that you will be using it in the near future, right? So go through the pooler documentations readme that has a pretty extensive documentation on what the current implementation is, and on top of it, if you wish to add any new data point, right, then we will be there over there, like engineering specific questions such as this, trying to contribute, extend a use case. We will be available most of the time on Discord to answer and help you through that if at all it is needed, right? Uh, so I would highly suggest you go through the Poolers README documentation, see how we have built out the current use case, and go through the very last section, which shows you how to extend it as well. You will also get a same closer look at the internals, but with your own experience as well. So that's why we are open source. That's why we're building it out in the open. We really wish that people go take a look and contribute according to the measure they've seen fit, right? So now that being said, Swaroop and Akshay, like, do you have something to add over here?
Akshay, you want to speak a bit, and then I'll sort of wrap things up.
Sure. Yeah, I think Anumit covered it really well. A couple of things that I can add is so first of all, for phase two, right? So right now there are only three snapshotters running, which are mostly Powerloom nodes. But we are in plan. We have plans to open source the code base first of all. Once that is done, we just need to clean the code base a bit. So once that bit is done, we plan to onboard some of our existing snapshotters to phase two. so that they can contribute to these quests as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it, Swaroop. If you want to share any more updates, that would be it.
Okay.
Right. Awesome. That was a very detailed presentation, and I wanted to give one more shout out to Sagar who designed these slides. These are
Yeah.
best looking tech slides. I've seen a lot of presentations in my life. Usually we put a lot of effort for non-tech side, right? Um, and Pratik's not on the call right now, but he can definitely agree that we put that effort in marketing, but usually people don't put that effort and they make tech slides look not so great. And yeah, shout out to Sagar from our team getting it done. I know some changes were even done or just a few hours ago as well. And then
Yeah.
as usual, thank you to Anumit to go into the details. I know it can be a bit much for people who are new, but the reason that we are doing this is
Yeah.
also to build up our repository of content, right? So, we don't want to do it only when we have, let's say, thousands of developers, right? Even if there's 3 people, and at the moment, you can clearly see there's a lot of snapshotters. And shout out to all our testnet snapshotters. I know you guys have been waiting on the phase 2 one. It's coming soon. And that was the part of this call today, like to show you guys the effort that has gone in. And I think that goes without saying for Akshay for single-handedly sort of taking phase 2 from a hack that we had from an older idea from back in July, brought it back, ported it over,
Yeah.
and I think it's already been hinted. It is cross-chain compatible, and this is one of the powerful things about what we are building at Powerloom. And it's not just for yes, Anuman, what do you say?
No, I think my network connection came back to the RPC. It's so funny.
No worries. And for we are doing with ZKVM. There is an announcement going on next week for one of our other partners. I cannot reveal that right now because we just want to make sure it's finalized and it goes out. And even if it doesn't, right, like the way we have built it, we can support. We will add other chains, right? So we are only doing it because we want to get more of the community from different chains involved. But don't fear, all of the people who have been doing quests, and since we are sort of talking about phase 2, I'll sort of get into that discussion. They will be getting the opportunity to not only do these quests, but you are still being marked for the work that you've done so far, right? So, and I think maybe right now we're not sharing the screen, but if you guys, the people who have had access to Merkle, you will see a nice facelift that has happened today. We've taken the feedback. And they have taken the feedback, and that's why Anmut gave a shout out to them because they're constantly listening to you. I know it's painful to get all those, especially the Discord and the Telegram integrations, because that's also out of our control, right? Like we use all these third parties and we have to work with that. All the on-chain stuff, they worked hard, and they've also improved the UI because there was a lot of confusion on how many quests are done, and they've made that improvement. So I hope you guys really like it. On that note, I think the time is now, and in about 4 minutes from now, because Pratik has it scheduled, we will be sending out our final batch of invites. That means phase 2 will pretty much be open to anyone who signed up. Conditions apply. We definitely did have to make a cutoff somewhere because we didn't want it to be real time because it's not fair to the people who have been waiting. Thanks for the confetti, Akshay. I don't know if you guys can see that in our Zoom screen, but we will be, I believe, anyone who signed up before we announced this tech community call. So that was depending on your time zone. You can see on the Discord. It's just a few days, right? So 3-4 days ago, if you did sign up up until then, anyone who had signed up is going to get that invite, right? Now, keep in mind, emails are difficult to send. They land in your spam. You might have entered something different. So there will always be these challenges. So please be a bit patient. Emails will go out. And all those who have been waiting, some of you didn't realize you actually had the email in your inbox for like a few weeks now. So you should definitely go check. We are going to try a new system, probably either from tomorrow, now that we have sent out all the big invites. So we're going to go from the beginning again, track down people who haven't even started the quests. So we're going to send you one reminder, right? So this will be sent through a different system just to test whether this email gets delivered. It might be not as fancy because we're trying to keep it very, very simple, just a pure one text with a link, right? And yep, that's about it. I know most of you have been patiently waiting. It's about 18,400 invites that will officially go out once this is done. Actually, not 18,400. It's probably a bit more than that. We keep adding more people. So yeah, pretty much phase 2 is open to everyone now, and anyone who's signing up now, don't worry, we will be giving out invites pretty much not on a weekly basis. We'll just roll it out like every 24, 48 hours. We'll just start sending out invites now. I think the platform can now pretty much handle it. That was something that we also wanted to test. And for people who have finished all the quests, which is awesome, because I initially thought, oh, it costs a bit of gas. Maybe not everyone's going to finish all the quests. A lot of people, either you started it, you didn't start it, or you started and finished everything, which is super cool. It's making our lives harder. So don't worry, new quests are coming. They might be coming in with a new chain, maybe 2 chains, who knows? We will all reveal that in good time. We've actually done all the work behind the scenes for both of them. We're just waiting for, in the end, when we sort of announce it with somebody, we need their permission, right? If we don't get it, don't worry. We will still add the quests. It'll just not be with a big announcement, but we will still be adding them. So watch out for the new quests coming out next week. We will make an announcement on Discord. So this is where I wanted to sort of bring back the attention and end the call on that, is that a lot of times people don't check Discord announcements, right? Because Discord is really busy. You are in hundreds of servers. Some of you are who are on Nitro are even in like 300, 400 servers or whatever Nitro allows you to, right? So the one trick that I would really request you, not forcing you, I'm just requesting you, is you can mute the server, but just on the announcement channel, you can turn it on so that you just get the announcements, right? And that's one way. And I know it can get busy. We're actually very careful. If you see, we don't try to make more than one announcement in a day. Sometimes we even take the time because we don't want to ping you all. There's 13,000 of you on our Discord right now, so we're very careful when we do that. So that's where we'll be putting out the announcements. We're going to open up phase 2 to pretty much everybody today. And those who just signed up in the last few days, just wait a little more, please, because it'll be more of a rolling base setup. And yeah, there will be a leaderboard. I believe that was the next question that came up. The reason behind that was because we thought it would not be fair because we are doing cohort based, right? So people who came in the beginning will show up at the top 100 or top 200. Don't worry about that, right? We are already thinking of this, which is also why we haven't published that leaderboard for a reason. It might come at one point. It'll come at a point we don't want to say why, because if we say it, everyone's going to figure out and show up on that day. So it'll just come as a surprise. Until now, as long as you're doing all the quests, and more importantly, you have to pass that KYC. And I know that is the most uncomfortable part. That's why I kept it at the end before I get slammed for it. But it is what it is. We made it very clear on the CoinList page. We made it clear on our Google form. So I know there's been a little bit of backlash towards that. And it's more out of frustration. I know some of you don't like CoinList, or you don't like to KYC, or maybe you don't have the documents, right? Like I was born in a country where getting a passport was a big deal, right? Like, so unfortunately doing the countries based KYC is hard, right? So we understand that, but unfortunately we cannot make an exception, right? Because if we make an exception for one person, then we have to make an exception for everyone. So we are sharing the link, which is why we ask you not to start the quests until you have gone and checked that link out, right? So anyone who gets the invite, please check that KYC link. All of your emails get added, so it's a bit of a whitelist there as well, but you should be able to do the KYC. Now, if you have already done the KYC, maybe on a different email, don't worry about it. That we will solve that at the end when we are ready to give out the rewards, right? The reason we are not trying to do all the email changes right now, it doesn't matter. The idea behind that was mostly for people to have that expectation that we don't want you to start the quest if you're not even going to be qualified, right? Most of other, and I don't want to name other platforms, they actually didn't even bother, right? They make people do all the quests, and at the end they try to, when they're distributing rewards, they say, hey, you don't qualify anymore. So we wanted to keep it fair. There's no perfect way to go about this. We have tried our best. So I hope you guys accept the way we have set things up. So yeah, invites, final set of invites should have already gone out. I'm just going to do a double check on the reports if it's already been sent. Yes, it was scheduled 2 minutes ago. So yep, it's already been sent. Cool. So that makes it 18,500, 19,000 invites gone out. That is not a number I was expecting when we started this, Anubhav. We probably thought we were. But
Yeah,
don't worry about.
massive effort by the
Sorry.
team. No, massive effort by the team.
And to the community too, right? Like, I want to give a shout out to the community. You guys have spread the word
Yeah,
and continue to bring in your friends. Maybe we'll see if we can turn that into a task for you to invite your friends or something. Let's do that. Let's come up with something for the when you invite friends and stuff. But for now, the reason why we want to spread the word, and you might wonder, we are only rewarding 5,000 top ranked people. You'll be surprised how much of a drop off there is because we have a civil resistance, right? So the numbers might seem high with 19, 20,000, and we have done our best to restrict that, but people still, sign up with different emails or different IP addresses and Google accounts. You really can't stop it, right? If you if you put your effort. So we had to. The numbers might look high, so don't get worried that, oh, I'm now at the final batch, I'm not going to get a chance. No, as long as you're doing the quest, you will have a chance, and we will come up with some sort of a reward, at least as long as you finish your KYC and as long as you attempt the quest, right? So we're going to announce that in the coming weeks. Right now, the goal is, we wanted to send out the invites first. So on that note, I think we are 4 minutes past time, but I know we also started. I have a YouTube timer going on which says it's 59:50. Perfect. Okay.
I think I can take a couple of minutes, right, to just take
Sure. Go ahead.
a quick tour of the dashboard because there are a few things I did not get time to show because of the failed connection. But now that the connection is back, I'll just take 2 minutes, not more than that, right? So moving on to the next view. All right. So if you notice, one of the things when you notice the Uniswap dashboard itself, right, there is these backend calls that are being made. Let me quickly change the developer console. I hope you can see the developer console right now. So let's do a quick refresh and see what's going on. See a bunch of calls that are being made over here. Let's say the 7-day top bill, right? Can I zoom in? I can zoom in. Yeah, awesome. Go away. All right, yeah. So here we are against the aggregate 7-day top pairs. There is this response being returned. But if you notice, how do you know whether this is an IPS CID? So one of the things is that you can notice right at the top, there are these links, Cloudflare IPFS links to the data sets, right? So let me click both of them. They both have a certain CID, and the same CID you can access across different IPFS gateways. So our one is the Cloudflare IPFS, the other one happens to be the public IPFS gateway. All of these should ideally give you access to that same data set. If you see this epoch ID 5306 against which this data set has been loaded, and so on. You see, even if a certain public gateway fails, you can definitely go and start checking it out from something like the another IPFS.io gateway. Also, given the response from the backend, it gives you the project ID. I think let's copy it properly from here. So then I go back. Epoch ID was 5306. You can see that this is the finalized CID on the protocol contract. I believe the last time the issue was mostly with certain copy paste strings that was causing the issue. So this string you'll see is the same one that I had accessed over here. Yeah, right over against 5306. Yeah. So yeah, that was something that I just wanted to show in short, right? Swaroop, I think we are good to go for now, right? In case there were any more questions left, or we will move on then.
No, I don't see anything. There was a question about the coinless thing, which I addressed it.
All
So
right, awesome.
all good.
Okay, good.
All right. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. And please do subscribe to this channel so you can actually catch the video when we upload it. And I don't want to sound like a YouTuber, but you can also like the video if you want to. Awesome. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Right.